right, thanks, Phil. Now that we have our project ready to go, the first thing that we are going to want to do is get this image centered up, and then we can add our text and do a little more to the image itself. So if I click on the Show Transform Controls at the top, you will see that, and I'm going to zoom out here, you will see that the image is quite large. And I can actually click the Move tool, make sure I have that layer selected, and I can move this image around. And when I move it around, you can see where the dimensions of the image are. And what we want to do is we want to have this tree in the center of our document. And as I move around, it's actually going to try to snap to that. Now, one thing that you can do is in composition, it is nice to have symmetrical images like this, and this would look okay. But one composition trick that you can learn is to use the rule of thirds. And this is basically dividing your image up into 3 parts and then moving your main focal point to a third of that line. And it just creates a nice, pleasing look. And it'll also give us, if we move this tree down to the bottom third, it'll give us some more space at the top for our text. So let's see how that looks. I'm going to go ahead and find the center of this document. We know that we're working 1080 by 1080. So I've got my rulers shown. So if I go to View Rulers, you can see the rulers here. If you have inches instead of pixels, just double click on the ruler. It'll bring up your preferences and just change rulers to pixels right here. Then hit OK. And what we can do is we can click on the ruler and drag down a guiding line. Now we know that this document is 1080 by 1080, so half of 1080 is going to be 540. So I'm going to drop a line right there at the 540 mark, and I'm going to do one this way also, and you can see the pixels as I move it changes. So I'm going to make that 540. So this is the center of our document. Now I could go ahead, grab my Move tool, make sure I have that layer selected, and I could put the tree directly in the center, and this would be one way of doing the image. But I'm going to use the rule of thirds. So if we divide 1080 by 3, that's 360 pixels. So I'm going to click on this ruler, and I'm going to go down and drop it at 360. And if it doesn't land right on there, if you hold shift, you can do in increments of 10. So I'm going to drop that at 360, and then 360 plus 360 is 720. So that's going to be my next mark. Okay, I'm going to grab the center one and move it out of the way. And now we've divided this up vertically into 3 sections. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this tree and I'm going to make its focal point in the center of that third. And like I said, this does 2 things for the image. One, it makes the image more visually pleasing because you've off-centered it. And 2, it's also given us more white space at the top to go ahead and type in our information. Now this is a little low, so I don't have to be exact. I could actually just move this up a little bit and just give us a little more grass down here to look at. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just offsetting it from directly in the center is just more pleasing to the eye. It's a composition trick that's worked in videos and photography, and it's a pretty common practice to do. So once I have that where I want it, I'm going to go to that layer and I'm going to click on the lock button to lock that layer down, so now I can't move it while I'm editing the text and doing other things. So let's go ahead and add some text. I'm going to click on the text tool, horizontal type tool, and I'm going to use the Callisto MT font, and I'm just going to choose regular for now. And then I need to pick a color. We want to do a dark color because we're writing on a light background, and we could probably pick this dark tree color, but it might not come out so well. We're just going to use black for the sake of ease here, and black will be the most contrasting text that you can see. So as someone's scrolling through social media, it'll be high contrast and very easy for them to read as they're scrolling through. If you pick one of these colors, it might be too light and kind of blend in too much, but we'll just use black for today. So I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to type in the middle what our quote is. So someone is, down here I'm going to write sitting in the shade today because someone, and then it's going to say planted a tree a long time ago, but we're going to do something different for that. So go ahead and select your move tool, and you can move this to the top. As we move around, it'll automatically snap to the center for us, so that's pretty easy. Make sure we have the type tool selected. I'm going to select everything. Oh, I created a new box. I didn't mean to do that. Let me delete that out here. Okay, select everything and make sure that you've got the center on. It might be left justified. If that is, just go up here to the top and click on center. I've got set 60 points here, and I have it set to sharp and black. Now we want to open up the paragraph dialog box. I'm going to click on that and go to character, and we're going to do a couple different things here. The first thing that we want to do is, this is a little more spread out letter by letter than what we want to use in this particular inspirational quote, and we can actually bring that in some. So if I highlight everything and I go to VA, vertical alignment, I believe that's what that stands for, I can actually change this number to a lower number, say 50, and it's going to bring in those letters closer to each other. So that looks a lot better. And the next thing we want to do is, whenever you're doing inspirational quotes or copy in general, it's always nice to emphasize things that you want to say or to have stand out, just so it doesn't look too boring. So in this inspirational quote, we're actually going to emphasize sitting in the shade, and you can do that in a number of ways. You can make it bigger, you can make it bolder, you can change the color. For this one, we're actually going to make it italics. So highlight just that section and change regular to italics. And that makes it just a little bit different. Now you see it looks a little smaller, so we're going to want to make this actually a little bigger so it looks better here. Go ahead and highlight that again and change the type to, we'll try 72. 72's good. It's a little bigger than the rest, which is fine. It's more emphasized, but I actually want the words to actually land where today and the end of someone is, so that it's even. So go ahead and highlight that one more time, and let's change that to 80 and see how 80 looks. Okay, 80 looks a lot better. See how they're kind of evened up on the sides here, so that looks good. Now we have a little bit of space here and a lot of space in between these two lines, and I want to close the gap of space in between someone is and sitting in the shade. So I'm going to highlight these two sections, these two lines of text, and I'm going to go to this symbol here, and it says auto now. We are going to change that, and if I change this number, it's going to bring those in closer to each other. So I'm just going to do 48 to show you what it does. It brings that up closer to one another. Let's go ahead and change that to 80 also. And then when I click my move tool, we can look at this with no lines. Okay, that looks great. So this is looking really good. I'm going to go ahead and save out this document now. Okay, you always want to get in the habit of saving things as you move along, just so you have a copy in case your computer crashes or a lightning storm. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the next section of text, and it says planted a tree a long time ago. So go ahead and click on the text tool again, and we'll type that in, planted, and then we're going to hit enter a tree. And we're going to do something a little different here. So we're going to highlight these. We're first going to make it a little bigger. Probably going to be a lot bigger than this. Let's do 96. We'll mess around with that in a minute as we move and see how this looks. Now the first thing that we want to do is we want to make this bold, because we really want this to be the most emphasized thing that stands out. And we want it to be a little off-centered as we figure this out here. So we have planted a tree, and both of these are center. So if you imagine there's a line going down this right here, these are both centered to that line. Go ahead and grab a tree, and instead of it being centered, we can change the justification left or right. So this is right justified, where it's all going to the left of the line, and the lines, to the right of that. Let's do the left justified so that it's kind of off-centered like this. And grab the move tool. Let me move this guiding line out of here. Okay. All right. So that looks good. Now we're going to stick this about right here. I'm probably going to make this bigger. I can do that again with the type tool, or since I have show transfer controls on, I can just click on this and scale this out. If I hold shift, it'll retain the proportions so it still looks good. But I'm just going to make this a little bigger. And now what we're going to do is, instead of having it like this, we're actually going to tilt it a little bit. And the way we're going to tilt it is with the lines that are in this document. So if I look at the grass here, you can see this line, this kind of angled right here with the grass. I'm going to use that same tilt. So with show controls on, I'm going to go to the edge of this until I see this curved arrow sign, and I'm just going to rotate it until planted is following that same line as that grass. So now I can stick this in the center, but it's got that same kind of feel to it where it's going a little horizontal with that information. I'm going to hit apply to apply the transformation, and I can still come in here and edit this information. So I can highlight this, go to paragraph, and we're going to do a couple things. Let's bring these in a little closer also to themselves. 72 might be too small. Let's try 96. It's pretty good. Okay, so that's looking cool. Just checking the document, seeing if it looks the way I want. Let me scale this up just a little more. I moved it. Usually guys start scaling first and then hold shift. Otherwise you'll move it like I just did. Let's move this up a hair. Okay, that looks good. Let's add another, the last line of this. And we're going to say, a long time ago. Highlight all that. Make it regular again. Bring down the font size. And what we're going to do with this is we are also going to rotate it, and we want it to sit directly underneath under a tree. So go ahead and rotate that. Let's move it. Let's off center it from that A a little bit. Move it up. But then let's change the font here. We'll apply that transformation. I want to make the font a little smaller. 36 is way too small. 48 looks pretty good. Let's click on that. I'm using my shift keys to just kind of move it over. That looks good. It's just a little off on the rotation. Sometimes those transform tools kind of get in my way, and it makes it a little hard to see exactly where I want it. And another thing we can do is we can actually type this in. If it's not landing right where you want it, you can go up to the top here. And which one is it? This one right here with the degrees and the angles. You can slide this. Okay, yeah. So I can make that 1. -1. I want to go just a hair more. I'm being a little picky about this, but just want it to look good. Let's do -1 again. No, we need to go the other way. So let's do 1. Okay, that looks pretty good there. And I might just bump that up a little bit, get a little closer to tree. And then we always want to put in, if we're using someone's quote, we want to write in the name of that person. So we'll go ahead and click over here off to the side next to the tree and just do this little hyphen, Warren Buffett. And select that. We can move that right here where you can read it. I might make it a little smaller because what I'm doing is I'm using hierarchy of this text. So we see planted a tree, but you're still going to read top to bottom, left to right. And I don't want Warren Buffett. I want that to be kind of the last thing that's read. So I'm actually going to just turn down the font size a little bit on that. And I might move this around a little bit until it just kind of looks nice. Looks like it's part of the image here, but Okay. So that looks good. That looks very close to what we were going with our original image. So now the last thing that I want to do is I just want to make these colors pop in this background a little more. So I'm going to just adjust the brightness and contrast a little bit so it looks a little more pleasing. So I'm going to click on layer 1. I'm going to unlock it. I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast. Bump up the contrast a little bit. And let's see here. You could go a couple different ways. We can make it brighter at the top. I don't like that. Let's turn it down a hair. Let's turn the brightness down some. Oh yeah, that looks good. I like that. And let's turn this contrast up. And it's just going to make those oranges and colors just pop a little more within the document. So that looks really good. Okay, I think we're good here. Now we're almost done. We just have to save the photo so it's ready for sharing. I'll pass it over to Phil to show you how to do that now.